Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, happy to be with this very special panel, very diverse, which is beautiful, like a garden where 1,000 flowers grow. So it's wonderful to be here. First of all, I would like to congratulate all Muslims in the world. Today is the Eid al-Adha, one of the highest, festivities in the world for Muslims. As Muslim people from all nations of the world, millions, they go to Mecca for the annual pilgrimage. It's a wonderful day of atonement and harmony, but also forgiveness, where people can be somehow born again and plead to lead a good life and do good in the world. Also congratulate all those nations who are part of the Belt and Road Initiative for the 10th anniversary of the launching of the Belt and Road Initiative. I would like to start first with the title of our webinar, which is Decoupling or Bridging Civilizations. And the question of decoupling, or now in the EU called de-risking, it's important to address that one because it's a crucial matter and it's a serious matter, because on the economic side, decoupling or de-risking, we at the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden, in cooperation with the Guangdong Institute for International Strategies, we did a study earlier this year on the global supply chains, especially after the U.S. administration, issued its CHIP Act on the semiconductor, trying to decouple from China. So our research showed, and the title of our research was The Entanglement of Global Supply Chains, Why Decoupling from China is Suicide. Interestingly, yesterday, the foreign minister of Hungary, he used the same term. He said decoupling from China would be suicidal for Europe, which proves the point we have made, because the supply chains of the globe, not only with China, but globally, are so entangled. It's impossible to separate one nation from the rest of the world. So therefore, it's interesting. I mean, even in the recent visit by China's Premier Li Qiang to Germany and France, it was very clearly shown by German and French industrialists that this is not an option for Europe to decouple from China. And therefore, this is becoming a reality today. And hopefully, we will see the idea of decoupling, which is a more serious issue right now. We see there's a attempt to decouple from China as a civilization and as a nation. There has been a massive attack on China as a culture. We have seen with the shutting down of Confucius institutes in several European universities, even in the United States. Here in Sweden, there's even a targeting of children, Chinese language schools right now, a massive media attack, which is really, really unbelievable, because learning Chinese language is one of the most important and basics to get it to know, open the doors to China and finding that. So hopefully this will also, like the economic decoupling, the cultural decoupling from China would be unsuccessful. Now, I spent 1 month in China recently. I visited 6 provinces. I was also hosted by the GIIS, Mrs. Li Jing and her colleagues. I don't claim to be an expert on Chinese civilization, but in that month, I was happy to visit almost 15 museums and archaeological sites in China, and to see the breadth and depth of Chinese history and culture and civilization, which I really recommend that everybody does, to travel to China and stay there not only 1 week, but take as much time as possible and visit different parts of China, but also visit these museums and sites to get a real understanding of how deep and impressive it is. I mean, this applies to every nation, but we are talking about China. It's very important. And the things I learned from this very short introduction into Chinese culture is that there are three important features of China, which we need to understand, because to have a dialogue, we need to understand the other side too, not only ourselves, which is also important, is that the Chinese civilization, as Ambassador Sway said, there is continuity. It's one of the only civilizations which has been a continuous existence. But it's also not only continuing as it has been for 5,000, but it has been evolving. There's an evolution where China, and that's my second point, has inclusivity. It takes good impressions from other civilizations and adapt it to the Chinese context, like taking in Buddhism, taking in even Islam. And I saw in many parts of China, there are Muslims and Muslim communities and mosques that are not only the oldest in China, but are the oldest in the world, actually, that have existed for 13th centuries. So China takes in, it's inclusive, it takes in the good impressions from other civilizations. And the third point is that China is sharing. Because China has made great contributions, it doesn't keep a monopoly over its culture or technological innovations, but it shares it with others. One of the greatest examples, which I have studied myself, that what happened between China and the Islamic world. Already in the Tang Dynasty, 750, we had the first contact. Unfortunately, it was a clash, but then it was resolved very quickly, and diplomatic relations were established between the Muslim Empire or the Baghdad Caliphate and the Tang Dynasty. And one of the greatest gifts that the China gave and the ancient Silk Road provided to the world was not silk, it was not gold or silver or spices. Actually, there was not much silk trade in the ancient Silk Road. The idea of Silk Road is a modern invention by European Orientalists. But this is the most important thing which impacted global civilization, as I showed in China, it's this: the ability to produce paper on an industrial scale. Of course, China gave intangible things, but this is a tangible gift which China gave to the Islamic empire. And because we had an enormous intellectual outpouring in Baghdad and other centers of culture during the Abbasid Islamic Renaissance, but there wasn't enough material to put it on. All the works of philosophy, medicine, architecture, science, every aspect, there was a flourishing production, but there wasn't enough material to put it on and spread it. So by learning from China to produce paper on an industrial scale, that thing spread all over the planet, especially the areas under the control of the Islamic Empire in West Asia, Central Asia, but also to North Africa and parts of Europe. And that helped contribute even to the European Renaissance, because the Muslims, they not only translated from Greeks, the works of Plato and other philosophers and scientists, but also helped bring that back to Europe, which was the basis for the rediscovering Plato, for example. As Ambassador Sway, he mentioned Plato and Confucius. Rediscovering Plato again in Europe, in the European Renaissance, was a very important contribution of the Muslim world. So we have like a civilizational supply chain where one nation helps the other to develop. Although you might have conflict, but each nation hands over the torch of civilization to the others. And this is a very, very interesting aspect. One of the good examples how this civilizational supply chain happens is in Plato's dialogue Timaeus, one of the most important dialogues of Greece civilization, but had enormous impact on Europe. Timaeus deals with the creation of the universe. But in the beginning of the dialogue, Plato talks about when Solon visited Egypt, because most of the great Greek philosophers and scientists, they went to Egypt for education. They were taught by Egyptian priests. And that was somewhat of the things that not really mentioned so much. So we have this continuity, a supply chain of civilizations. So this is one of the important issues we have right now, that to have, and also as all the other speakers, especially Eric said, we have these two things: to show respect and to show and have a dialogue, to bridge all the differences among civilizations. We have to figure out and find what are our common grounds, rather than where we differ from each other. And I think there's ample examples in history where the clash of civilization led to dark ages. We experienced that many times, but also we had this dialogue of civilizations, as in the examples given today, and as I'm talking about now, that this is going to be one of the most important challenges, but also initiatives, and therefore the Global Civilization Initiative launched by President Xi Jinping has come at a very important point in history. It's a complementary to the Belt and Road Initiative, to the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative. All these things are one parcel, one package, but the Global Civilization Initiative is the highest level, because that really explores the ideas why each nation exists. What is the purpose of each nation and civilization? What is the purpose of each individual in these civilizations? And what are our common grounds that will be actually it will pave the way to have the Belt and Road, the global development, the sustainable development goals. All these things could be resolved if we reach an agreement on common principles for our nations, but also our civilizations. So this is a very important aspect of the work of the Belt and Road Institute, and it is the beginning of a much, much deeper discussion. So I thank you for listening, and hope to continue the discussion.